What was the wildest thing you witnessed at a wedding? Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and turn on the bell so you don't miss future videos. Thanks for the support. The bride had always dreamed of driving herself to the church in an open-top sports car. The wind blew her veil over her face, and she crashed the car. She didn't wear a seatbelt because she was worried about creasing the dress, and so face-planted the steering wheel and broke her nose. Blood and snot all over the very expensive vintage family wedding dress. We were waiting at the church with no clue what was happening because she was alone in the car. The ceremony was canceled because there was another wedding booked later. The venue, band, food, etc. was non-refundable and so wasted. The bride had no insurance, and so the car cost thousands on top of the wasted venues, etc. Huge arguments and fights outside the church between the families, with tensions high after comments about leaving him at the altar. Once she recovered, she wanted it all again, exactly the same. They split up. She wanted it all again, but after pissing all the money up the wall on the first wedding, the second wedding, although technically the first, was smaller and cheaper. They lasted a couple of years and split. Next story, a guy who had been stalking the bride for years tried to sneak into the wedding ceremony, got recognized by some of her friends, and stopped. He then tried to force his way past to get to her. The police were called, and now there is a criminal record and a restraining order against him. Next story, the bride forgot the groom's name and called him by the ex-boyfriend's name. The silence that followed was so loud, I think I actually heard the marriage certificate self-destruct. Next story, I was a photographer, and my best friend at the time did not want to have me taking photos because I was the best man. Additionally, his soon-to-be wife absolutely loathed me, though she loathed everyone, including him. She instead hired her best friend and gave her something like $1,000 to take photos. This was in the 90s. The friend shows up. Mind you, she had zero experience taking photos, and she has purchased several disposable cameras. For you young folks, most of those cameras had 800 speed film, which usually meant they were okay for mostly lifeless outdoor photos. Literally everything else would be super grainy and/or dark. I tell them I hope they have a better plan, but the wife goes to bat for her friend while yelling at me. Okay, I think. Good luck with all that. 2 weeks later, of course, they come to me asking if there's any way to fix the photos she just got back from the Walmart photo lab. The wife is in tears. Of course, there is nothing to be done. I will never forget, though, the wedding taking place and her friend cranking that camera dial non-stop every few seconds. Next story, the groom's stepdad got drunk and called his mama slurs, so the groom punched his stepdad in the mouth. I was part of a catering crew, and one of our guys helped break it up. Even more awkward, I lived in an apartment next door to the groom. Next story, a child pushing the 4-tier cake off the table and it just going everywhere. Bride and groom were furious. Not super scandalous, but wildest thing I've seen at a wedding so far. Next story, my 300-person wedding was next door to another 300-person wedding. We, brides and grooms, started dancing together. It became a huge party as others have joined to almost 2,000 people. Even DJs got together and sync played the same music, loud. We are still friends to this day. Next story, a childhood friend had an outdoor wedding at a popular historic building/community center. Reception moved inside. Everything is antique. It's quite beautiful. The wild part was at the end. The parents of the bride would not let bride and groom leave for their wedding night/honeymoon until all the tables and chairs were put away. Family members and friends of both bride and groom, including me, hastily got conscripted to help out. Night ended at like 10 or 11 p.m., with bride leaving crying and shaking in anger, while husband desperately tried to calm her down. All of us still there threw rice over them in the dark as they left for their ride to honeymoon suite. Bride's parents had no chill and still thought they were in the right. Bride and groom held hostage at their own wedding by her parents. The marriage didn't last. I kinda lost track of them because I moved, and they wound up with lots of issues. But a part of me wonders. Next story, the two that come to mind. 1. I was in a wedding where the officiant requested a moment of remembrance in honor of the bride's father, Larry. His name was not Larry. He also was not dead. He was sitting in the front row. Before anyone asks, he did not walk her down the aisle. They didn't have the best relationship. Her grandfather gave her away. 2. I was also at a wedding where during the first dance, I noticed a commotion down the hall where the caterers were set up. A teenage kid, probably his first job ever, was throwing and kicking catering equipment everywhere. As I was trying to figure out what the heck he was doing, he moved out of the way, and I saw the largest raccoon I've ever seen in my life going to town on a tray of mac and cheese. I guess he slipped in a door that had been propped open. Next story. Went to a wedding that my wife and I said will not last more than 2 years. The wedding was in the backyard of the bride's house. They had all the chairs and wedding arch set up outside. They set up a plastic tarp running down the aisle to walk on. Just before the wedding starts, there are darkening clouds appearing. Should have been a sign to move the wedding inside, but they invited too many people to the damn thing. Just as they start the wedding, it begins to rain lightly. The father of the bride is walking the bride down the lane and slips on the wet tarp and fall. Bride is now at the front, raining harder. People start to cover up with whatever they have. Some people start to get up too. Bride turns around and says to all, "This is my wedding. No one is going to ruin it. You better all damn sit your asses down." We all sit back down and the wedding resumes. It is now raining pretty good. The grass is now turning into mud. A few ladies in the crowd and the bridesmaid's makeup is now running down the faces. My wife has taken my jacket as a cover from the rain. They finish the vows and kiss, and then everyone runs to the house and garage to get out of the rain. Oh, remember how I said the grass was now mud? Yeah, lots of people slipped and fell in the mud on the way to the house. We got to the house. Many people looked terrible from the running makeup, muddy clothing, and soaking wet. A few of the women had to cover their chests and waists due to wet clothing becoming see-through. Most of the men were loaning their coats to the ladies to cover up. Dirty looks all around. The wedding cake was outside, and now brought in. The rain made the decorations on the cake turn all runny, and it looks horrible. The bride and groom began to cut the cake and feed each other. They smashed the cake pieces into each other's faces, then began a food fight with each other. My friend's wife got hit in the face with purple icing cake on her face and dress. The priest got hit with and yellow icing on his white robe. There was nothing left of the cake to serve. Food being served was still frozen in the middle of the food, and the stuff that was not frozen was burned. The dessert was supped to be the cake, but as said above, there was nothing left. There was a goodie bag that people got on the way out. Had a lollipop, a coupon for ice cream cone at McDonald's, a pencil with the bride and groom name on it, and Halloween-size MMS. My wife, whose dress was filthy, her makeup was out of whack, and her hair was a mess, said to me that she does not want to see those people again. For 6 months, she was so mad. The couple divorced 11 months later. Next story. Groom's family was a bunch of incredibly good and friendly people. They're also a bunch of loud, rowdy party people. Groom's dad goes up to give a speech. He holds the microphone up in the air. He says, "You see this? This is a microphone." He turns and chucks it out into the nearby field. This was a beautiful, mountainside outdoor venue. He, being a very loud individual, goes, "Who needs that crap?" He goes on to tell a story about how he met the bride, and thought, "Oh no, my kids are going to eat her alive. This sweet, innocent young woman is going to hang out with my kids? My kids are damn animals." Then one day, his 3 adult kids come back from a night on the town with the bride. He describes how they all stumble into the house, drunk as fish, falling over and incoherent. He describes how the bride doesn't even make it to the couch, falls over on the living room floor. The dog comes up and starts licking her face, and she manages to slur, "Don't you damn judge me," to the dog. He goes, "In that moment, I knew. She was perfect for my boy. I said to myself, this girl is a damn animal. Welcome to the family." The bride was sheepish but clapping. The groom could not have looked more proud. The crowd went nuts, cheering for them. The bride's family? Well, there were some unhappy tears. Next story. It wasn't really wild, but I went to a wedding that took place on the grass next to a Walmart. The people getting married were older, like 50s or 60s, met working at Walmart, and thought Walmart was just the best, so got married at Walmart. And by went to, I mean went outside on my break and got a piece of cake from my coworker's wedding reception, which we were all invited to do. I think the wildest part about it was all the trashy comments by customers about it. I mean, these 2 people worked at Walmart. They had no money. They both old. They had no parents helping pay for anything. Venue, free. Cake and drinks, provided by the store manager. DJ, a kid in electronics department who really wanted to be a DJ. And the list goes on. But I guess if you're poor, you're not allowed any moments of happiness in this life. You only get to suffer and serve. Why the heck are they out there getting married instead of in here serving us? Next story. Jim Bro started a pushing match with a guy who cut in front of him at the bar line. It turned into a fight that spilled into the parking lot, and at least 15 guys, including the groom and father of the bride, were involved. The bride's mother was physically sitting on her, holding her arms, while she screamed, "My daddy!" because her dad had broken someone's nose and was getting soundly beaten by two of his friends while the groom tried to keep them off of him. Police came, people ran, assault charges, and 8 dues issued. And the next morning, there was a repeat at the hotel, when some of the guys who got bailed out met up in the lobby fresh from jail. Groom got married and arrested on the same day. Crap of a wedding night. We were neighbors, and my parents were friends of the groom's parents. It was absolutely wild. Next story. At every family wedding, we have a tradition that was started by my great-grandma, Nanny Shift, back in the early 80s. She apparently got very drunk at someone's wedding back and got kinda crazy. For reference sake, she was in her 80s and wore old-fashioned bloomer-type underwear that looked like long shorts but in bright-colored silks. So anyways, Nanny Shift is completely drunk and feeling kinda frisky. So she had the band, no DJs back then, play an old burlesque number, and she started lifting her skirt and dancing around, showing off her red silk bloomers and parading around while everyone died of laughter. For the grand finale, she turned her back to the new couple sitting at their table, put her head between her knees to look at them through her legs, and flipped them off with both hands proudly. The room erupted into big cheers, and Nanny was ushered away with another drink. So naturally, this became a thing at every wedding we've had since then. When Nanny Shift passed away in the mid-90s, my Aunt Lois took over the bloomers and has worn them for at least 10 weddings over the years, including my own and more recently, my young cousins. I love my family. We throw the best weddings. Next story. Went to a wedding of a friend. After the meal, they gave guests small souvenir box with a little personalized thank you note coupled with a small chocolate-smelling, chocolate-looking hand soap. A couple hours later, a kid was found in a bathroom, projectile puking a mix of chicken nuggets, hand soap, and foam. Poor little guy ate too. They had to make an announcement to warn people it was soap and to not eat it. Next story. I was at a wedding where I only really knew the bride. She and the groom had this rescued Rottweiler that they really loved, and they'd had him in some pretty intense training to be a tough dog, as the groom wouldn't stop calling him. The dog was even part of the ceremony as the ring bearer, which, you know, very cute. But then at the reception, in the middle of the couple's first dance, a guy kicks open the door of the ballroom and charges in shouting, "Babe, I miss you, don't do this!" And the bride goes, "What are you doing? We're over, I don't want to see you!" And the guy lunges at her, and suddenly the damn dog attacks him. It's losing its mind, barking and growling, and it bites down on his arm and wrestles him to the ground. People start screaming. I hear some kids at the table next to me crying, and the whole thing is just chaos. And then suddenly, the guy stands up like nothing happened. The dog sits down, and the bride announces that this guy is their damn dog trainer, and this was a demonstration of the dog's defensive abilities. He takes a bow and shows the little padded protective thing he had on his arm under his shirt. And then he has the audacity to have the dog do a couple of normal tricks, like rolling over and barking on command. We all kind of politely applauded. He walked out of the room, and then they finished their first dance, like this was not an absolutely traumatic experience for everyone in the room. Next story, having a sing-song session in the residence bar after the wedding, couple of uncles of the groom stood up on one of the tables, one playing a guitar and the other an accordion. Bear in mind this was about 2 or 3 a.m., and everyone there had been on the sauce since at least dinner time, if not earlier. Another uncle, I think, playing the bodhran, decides he wants to go on the table as well. So up he hops. Alas, this was all too much for the poor table and the legs gave way. Uncle with the bodhran hits the deck, but the other 2 uncles, clearly seasoned drinkers and with reflexes of men decades their junior, simply stepped onto the neighboring table as their table collapsed and didn't even miss a beat in the song. Next story. Wedding went off fine, but during the reception at a casino ballroom, one of the bridesmaids, who also was the cousin of the bride, ended up nearly getting it all shut down and now has a lifetime ban from said casino. 1. She stayed up all night before and barely made it to the wedding. 2. Only thing keeping her functional was the substances she brought, and she ran out at the beginning of the reception. 3. Stole the mic from the best man during his speech and proceeded to sing Forever by Chris Brown, running around the tables till someone caught her and took it back. 4. Didn't want to walk to the bathroom, so she pissed in the hallway outside the ballroom on the carpeted floor. This got the bride and groom a warning from the casino that she needed to either stay in the ballroom or go back to her room, or they would shut down the reception. 5. She vanished during part of the reception, but then returned later almost without her clothes and what appeared to be suspicious wet white stains all over the back of the dress, and then proceeded to dance with said tit out, even when people told her and tried to fix it for her. 6. The only bartender for the wedding disappeared at one point, and she was found do BJ him in the walk-in by catering staff. This was finally when the bride told her to go to her hotel room and sleep it off. 7. Except she didn't. After she was escorted to her hotel room, she left and was offering a different bartender at the casino a BJ if he could get her some more substances. 8. Then she proceeded to try the same thing with several random people in the casino who were gambling, and ended up puking all over a craps table. This got her kicked out, so she had to take all her luggage and wait outside the casino, crying in the parking lot till someone could give her a ride to a different hotel. 9. It was the bride's brother who gave her a ride, and she soiled herself in his car so badly that he had to take the seat out and get a new one because it was everywhere, and I couldn't get the smell out no matter how much I cleaned. Philly weddings are a trip. Next story. Last dance of the night. Bride and groom center of the floor, surrounded by family. We're under a large tent outside in a beautiful garden facility. Groom is beyond wasted at this point, and midway through that final moment, steps away from the center of attention to casually drop his pants and pee about 15 feet away from everyone witnessing it. Next story. Stand-up comedian that came with the hotel package proceeded to tell the worst one-liners known to man whilst everyone ate in silence. The DJ kept calling the groom by the wrong last name and played the wrong Shania Twain song for their first dance, so they had to start over again. Groom's sister spent all night in the car park waiting for substances to be dropped off. This was all the same wedding. Next story. The venue was a brothel. It looked like a beautiful, gated, small apartment complex with a full bar next to a courtyard swimming pool. We were helping the bride get ready. My mom looked at me and said, "There is something off about this apartment complex. They don't have kitchens in any of the apartments. There were doors conjoining the rooms, just beds and bathrooms. Nobody actually lived there." Next story. Small wedding. When the bridge and groom left, they threw a shopping bag with all the stuff they bought to the reception on the back seat. Bride piled in, groom followed. Bride had leapt onto the cake, knife basically, went about an inch into her thigh, through the dress, which was thankfully cheap. No permanent damage, didn't seem to hurt too much thanks to all the adrenaline, but a sick scar, a story for the grandkids, and more blood than one might like to see on a wedding day. Next story. The wedding planner handed out containers of live butterflies for the guests to throw like rice. But the ceremony was night. The butterflies were asleep. Some groggily flapped a few times after being launched into the air, but most dropped to the concrete like stones. The guests proceeded to smush them underfoot. This weird girl walked around trying to save them, which drew the guests' attention to the senseless butterfly massacre and made the wedding planner, bride's friend, cry. I was that weird girl, and I'd damn do it again. Next story. The groom projectile vomited halfway through his vows. Luckily, it was an outdoor ceremony, so he ran off into the grass to do it. But poor guy was dry heaving on his hands and knees for a good 5-10 minutes before coming back to finish his vows and kiss the bride. Next story. Bride got so smashed, she couldn't say her vows properly, then passed out, so she wasn't in any of the photos. Her sister got so angry, she punched her mum. Then when the bride woke up, she got caught in bed with the best man. I know this because they got caught by me, in my room. I am sure you'll be shocked to learn they are no longer married. The ceremony was at midday. She woke up around 4 p.m. I caught them in bed at around 2 a.m., and they certainly both knew exactly what was going on because they both spent quite a long time trying to explain it away and stop my girlfriend from immediately telling the groom. Quite dark what is being suggested. Next story. Went to a big country wedding in rural Georgia when I was a kid with my parents. They had bonfires and maybe a few hundred people. They had this large tray of brownies inside a barn away from the real food, and they told us no kids allowed in the barn. During the ceremony, I snuck in and ate 3 big brownies, then went and sat by the bonfire and stared at it for what seemed like hours. I was maybe 9 years old and always remembered it as a magical and surreal night that I never forget. I asked my dad about it when I was maybe 24 and told him it was one of the best nights of my childhood. He goes, "Oh yeah, that's the night you ate a bunch of brownies." Damn, I thought magic was real for a while. Next story. Wedding 1, terrible priest. The priest was late, disheveled, and looked hungover, while giving an painful, cringy homily in which he pretended to know the bride and groom, but never used their names or a single detail about their relationship. He said, "And they will continue to get to know each other tonight as they explore every inch of each other's naked bodies." Yikes! The next song was "Bone of My Bone, Flesh of My Flesh." Very awkward. And yes, the priest came to the reception and got trashed. That was almost a given. He drunk danced with a dog collar and leash around his neck. Wedding 2, me. I was a good friend of the bride. She invited me to do a reading at her wedding. The night prior, after the rehearsal dinner, everyone went to a bar. This was a South Side Chicago wedding, so a loud, fun crowd. The groom and his guys left around midnight, so he wouldn't see the bride on the wedding day. I partied with the bride and bridesmaids. I was riffing and goofing with my church reading, making up words. I changed the refrain from "The Lord is kind and merciful" to "The Lord is kind to some people." I would invent passages like, "Though I walk through the valley of promotion," and they give it to Chad, and he gets a corner office, "Still, the Lord is kind to some people." The bridesmaids would shout out the last 3 words and then drink. At the wedding, during the ceremony, I did my reading, completely straight-faced, no weirdness, no reference to last night's jokes. But when the videographer turned the camera to the bridesmaids, they sat in the front pew, laughing, snickering, doubled over. To me, the video looked like a Salem witch trial with women laughing and snickering for no discernible reason while the Holy Bible was read aloud. Pretty tame, but bizarre on film. Wedding 2, same wedding, bride. During the planning, the groom kept asking for things she kept vetoing. Can we have a disco DJ on roller skates? No. Can we have a clown who makes balloon animals for people as they leave the church? No. What if we had 3 live turkeys at the reception hall, just running wild? No. All this suggested in a spirit of play. He kept inventing outrageous requests. The groom is a great guy, and he makes his bride laugh. After the priest pronounced them husband and wife, and everyone clapped, they faced the long aisle to walk out. The bride, my friend, leans over and says to him, "Look!" At the far end of the naive, near the back of the church, is a fully made-up clown already making balloon animals for the guests and wedding party. So many wedding photos with balloon animals. 30 years and 2 grown kids later, they are still in love and still goofy and playful with each other. Next story. Mother of the bride pushed her daughter down the grand staircase of the hotel when she found out her and my brother had premarital sex. We are not religious. I was inexplicably chosen to walk the mom down the aisle, and I told her I thought she was an embarrassment to moms everywhere, and if I ever saw her again, it would be too soon. That whole wedding was whack. Never going to a Jersey wedding again. Next story. The bride and groom didn't want to throw rice because they believed it harmed birds, so they threw corn instead. After their wedding ceremony, which took place on one of those huge, old-school pirate-type sailboats, about 50 birds dive-bombed the couple going after the corn that was in their hair and on their clothes. The couple had to take off full sprint the entire length of the boat to get to safety while flailing their arms trying to knock the birds away. Was like watching a horror movie in real time. Next story. Someone crap in the hot tub at the reception venue. The venue wanted the damages paid before we all left, so the bride and rest of the wedding party were ripping open their cards looking for cash to pay it off. Next story. Groom was 30 minutes late to the ceremony after everyone joking the whole day that he was going to be late to the ceremony. The bride wasn't even mad and thought it was pretty funny. Next story. At my brother's-in-law wedding reception, his mom, sister, and 2 uncles all went out and changed into coveralls, bib overalls, and no shirts and came stomping in like a jug band. They whooped and hollered around for 5 minutes. One of the uncles grabbed a microphone and berated the attendees for not partying like rednecks. I think they thought everyone would think it was funny, but mostly people sat in silence, which made the whole thing kinda sad. Next story. A close friend got married on a beach in Maui. The reception was at a restaurant overlooking the beach. In the middle of the dinner and party, up off the beach walks Morgan Freeman, who proceed to sit with the couple and offer congratulations and fatherly advice, and hung out at the party for about an hour before moving on. Surreal. Next story. The DJ started playing the song Shout in reverse because he hit a switch with his elbow and didn't know how to fix it. I was the DJ. It was one of the first weddings I ever DJ. I finally figured out how to unreverse it after an eternity and apologized to the crowd and started it from the beginning and everything was cool, but that was rough. Next story. So many options. The spontaneous choreographed dance number doesn't even rank. I think it's a toss-up between the wedding speech that started with, "I don't believe in the institution of marriage," and the wedding where the groom's response to, "Have no other woman before her," was, "I'll try," and the bride slugged him. Next story. Retired pro photographer that did wedding photography for years and saw too much insanity. One wedding that was particularly odd was a large, big church wedding where both families were die-hard Florida State fans. The bride's parents' house looked like the gift store exploded, logos everywhere. Well, the only day they could get the church was the day of the big Florida versus Florida State football game. As I'm doing formals of the groomsmen, I noticed they were all wearing a single earpiece that looked like Secret Service agents. Every man in the wedding, including both dads, had them. During the ceremony, they were all listening to the darn football game, and twice there were audible noises and twitches as the game had a big play. Too much fandom there. Next story. Went to a wedding when I was younger. It was an outdoor wedding on camo grounds we all worked at. The food was kept out with those little fire burners to keep the food warm. Needless to say, the plastic tables caught on fire, and half the food burned with the tables. For a couple years, there was a big burnt spot on the ground. Next story. One of my friends had a bad divorce, and the ex was stalking her. He kept threatening to show up at her wedding. She had her wedding and reception right near where he was living, because he would never look there. He kept looking for it near where they used to live together 30 miles away. Almost every weekend, people were telling us he would be out hunting for her wedding. When we were leaving the reception, we saw him drive by. It worked. The reception was 3 miles from his apartment. She hid everything in plain sight. Next story. 2 different weddings. 1. The bride's family threw a fit when they found out she signed a prenup. Smashing furniture, screaming, police. The marriage was annulled shortly after. 2. The groom found out a few days before the wedding his fiancée was cheating. Day of the ceremony, he emailed proof to bride's family and no-showed. The guests were told to proceed to the reception. Eventually, word got around. The DJ played the country song, "Your Cheating Heart." Next story. I got hired to photograph a wedding, and it turned out to be a biker wedding. Bride and groom show up to do the pre-ceremony photos, and she is wearing a red leather miniskirt, barely there top, red stripper heels, and a red veil. That was a fun day. Next story. Someone did the worm at my wedding, and her dress got stuck over her head. I went to a wedding, and the best man cried so much during the speech that the groom had to stand with him and console him. It took a while. Pretty sure he was in love with the groom. Photographed a wedding where the best man gave the most sexist speech that eventually the father of the bride just stood up and clapped until everyone joined in, and he sat down. Next story. I used to work at an expensive wedding venue as a valet, waiter. I personally think the craziest thing was seeing a couple break up during their $180K wedding. Some notable mentions. Guy asked me to get him his gun after parking car, Indian couple rented elephant, and walked in on way too many hookups in the depths of the venue. Next story. I was at a wedding that was being held at a country club, and it had a beautiful pond on the property. There was a sign near the pond that said, "Do not approach the swans." Well, an older lady decided to not heed that warning, and this mama swan came up out of the pond and charged this woman, knocked her down, and took her under her wing and drug her almost entirely into the pond. It was hilarious and scary at the same time. That swan totally owned that woman. Next story. Cousin of the bride stole the DJ's debit card, used the Interact machine at the venue, and stole the maximum the machine would allow, $350. Proceeded to then steal the bride's and his grandfather's car, outrun the cops, and be found hiding under his dining room table. Grand theft auto robbery. Bride didn't know a single thing about it until the next day. Everyone managed to keep it hidden from her, thankfully. Groom included. I was the bride. Next story. A positive, funny one. At my cousin's wedding, there was a little basket of D20s left out for guests to take home. as both he and his wife play D&D. Several other people, including myself, play, and so we all run over as soon as that basket is discovered. We're all rolling dice and laughing and getting just average rolls. Then the groom walks up, and we all go silent as he picks up a single dice and rolls, and he rolls a nat 20, and we all go ballistic. He falls to his knees, staring at it in shock. His wife is laughing behind him, holding his shoulders as we all scream bloody murder. Not as crazy as some of these stories here, but ludicrous for a bunch of nerds. Next story. Groom's brother wasn't expected to turn up due to pretty much alcoholic and couch surfing. Turned up at the ceremony, drunk and looking shabby in jeans. Fast forward to the reception. There is little take-home bottles of champagne wine on each place setting. He is just grabbing everyone's and necking them. Like a madman. Speeches start. The bride's dad is welcoming the groom to the family. Brother stands up and starts yelling, "You'll regret that," thinking it was funny. Dancing starts. He is on the dance floor, going wild as a typical drunk man, but he is grabbing the kids and trying to dance with them. They are running away as if he is a monster. Finally, one of the fathers ends up punching the brother out on the dance floor after he picks up a little girl, shaking her thinking it's funny, and she's petrified and screaming in fear. Was a surreal, almost movie-like experience. Crazy thing is, I'm a recovering alcoholic myself, and all I could think of was that it could be me in a blackout. He unfortunately was so disconnected from reality that he was thinking he was having fun. Next story. My mom hooked up with one of my oldest friends at my wedding. The reception was at an old pub that has a waterfall round the back, and she disappeared to the waterfall for more than half of the reception with him once the food was finished. She also, in an attempt to cover this up, attempted to make half of the guests go on a walk with her to the waterfall after she returned. So she also tried to literally take my guests away from the wedding to hang out with her instead. Also, she dressed in black for the wedding and looked like a billionaire's mistress at a funeral. Next story. It was outdoors, and the weather turned bad pretty quickly. The tornado sirens started going off during the ceremony, and they just kept going. Literally shouted their vows over the noise. I was also told that the bride had picked her metal habit back up prior to the wedding to lose some weight. This information was met with general approval because she looked great. Next story. My wedding. My bride didn't actually want to marry me. I had no idea. She spent the whole night outside doing substances with her friends. Married 4 months. Peak humiliation. Next story. It's not too wild, but I remember watching the first dance at a friend's wedding, and it was so awkward. They were looking everywhere but at each other. This is after she had called off the wedding twice. I was not shocked when the marriage didn't last. Next story. My dad and his, now ex-wife had their wedding in their backyard under a canopy. The officiant was this earthy, crunchy woman who did some sort of Native American ritual. All of them are white as snow. And the ceremony ended with the woman screaming at the top of her lungs. This guttural scream was so out of nowhere, it scared me. It took everything in me not to start laughing in the front row. Next story, lots and lots of substances. This was in Macau ages ago with an ex. Wedding in her family. I don't know what the heck her relatives did, but I did not expect a Chinese wedding to have that much substances. Next story, either myself knocking the wedding cake over while playing with the ring bearer dog, or when I was at a wedding on a farm and saw someone flopping around covered in mud in an irrigation ditch when I went down there to pee. Apparently it was someone who fell in trying to take a picture, and they were looking for their camera, but as I was in an inebriated state, my mind immediately went to, that's gotta be an alligator. Next story. It was a cold spring morning in Washington State. Ceremony was outdoors despite the cold. They gave everyone a little box, and were told to open it when they make an announcement to open them. They yell to open the boxes, inside a real butterfly, but it was cold. So when people opened the boxes, most didn't fly out. I then see a bunch of people tipping their boxes to the side to dump their butterfly onto the ground. We then had to watch as everyone filed out from the ceremony, crushing the butterflies on the ground as they went. My wife and I were cringing hard as we kept seeing the poor things get stepped on. Next story. My middle-aged uncle karate chopped a 22-year-old guy's beer out of his hand. The choke slammed the dude into a picnic table. Then my other uncle climbed on top of him and threatened his life. I thought the whole interaction was just the bee's knees. Context. First uncle, the choke slammer, was the father of the bride and the purchaser of the beer. He notified everyone that the kegs will be turned off at 1 a.m. The young man responded by ignoring him and calling him a fat jerk as he went to self-serve himself another beer at 1:05 a.m. Next story. I was at a friend's wedding, and right in the middle of the vows, a cell phone started ringing. It turned out to be the bride's uncle. Did he silence the phone and whisper, "Sorry"? No. This dude answers the phone and proceeds to have a loud conversation for about 2-3 minutes. The daggers the bride was staring at him is a look I'll never forget. Unrelated, but at the same wedding, during the dancing, the DJ played a Tejano version of Achy Breaky Heart, no less than 5 times. Next story. I saw a wedding once where the groom got food poisoning the morning of. He was looking really rough, literally green, sweating profusely, shaking. We all thought he was just nervous. He held it together until right after the guy said, "You may now kiss the bride." That's when he sprinted to the bushes behind the altar and promptly hurled. His just-about-to-be wife hurried over to him and told him, "If you are scared to do this, we don't have to." That's when he finally explained to everyone that he thinks he ate something bad, and he really wants to do this. After a couple minutes of puking, his grooms popped him a breath mint, a water, and wiped to freshen up real quick. Then they said, "You may now kiss the bride." They kissed, and he sprinted to bathroom with one fist in the air as everyone cheered. It was chaos, but it could not have happened to better people. They laugh about it this day. What's even crazier was the honeymoon. For some reason, the groom's parents were involved. He's learned to deal with it now, but at the time, the groom had a real problem of letting his mom have her way all the time, and she was a total control freak. She kept making comments about the bride not being good enough for her son, right in front of the bride. He piped up every time and talked about how great his new wife was, but after it kept happening, the wife literally left the dinner table, went home, packed her bag solo, and caught a flight home halfway across the country. She said she was just going to take a nap. She texted him when she was already on the plane. They are still together 10 years later and happy. But damn, was that a rough start. Next story. The pastor said, "This is the part of the ceremony where I usually share some words of wisdom with the happy couple, but I don't have anything in particular to share today." He then ducked under the podium, stood back up and said, "But my friend Kermit the Frog here would certainly like to share some thoughts on love and marriage." 5 minutes of a poor Kermit impression with a decent Kermit puppet by a poor ventriloquist followed. I was like 9 years old, and even I knew this was kind of lame for a wedding. Next story. I distinctly remember being like 11 years old, watching my great-uncle grooving around the dance floor with a pitcher of beer. He then took off his wife's high heel, filled it with beer, and chugged that beer out of the shoe. Next story. There was a super nasty lady that was standing in front of that little table they set up with people's names and table assignments on it. Someone very politely asked her to move so that other people could get their cards so they knew where to sit. This lady had an insane reaction and started cursing out this polite gentleman. Other people separated the lady from the situation. For the rest of the night, this lady kept talking trash and moaning about that interaction, loud enough for other people in the reception hall to hear, to the point where the MC went over and asked her to stop. Towards the end of the night, this lady sent her male date over to the polite gentleman's wife to make some nasty comments. The polite gentleman restrained himself all night from saying something back to this rude lady. This lady's date ended up getting in the face of the wife of the polite gentleman and ended up touching her. The polite gentleman and the rude lady's date got in a fist fight. The polite gentleman protected his wife, and the rude lady's date, despite being quite larger, did not know how to fight and ended up on the floor with a bloody face. Unfortunately, I was the polite gentleman. Next story. Either the one where the best man missed the ceremony, then turned up late to the reception to shout abuse at the groom because his, provided free of charge, hotel room wasn't nice enough, then try and fight him before being kicked out, or the one where the best man's speech lasted 45 goddamn minutes, most of which was waxing lyrical about and explaining the rules of the board game Jungle Speed, which is apparently a favorite of him, the bride, and the groom. I have Jungle Speed. It's not that amazing. Next story. The bride had been saving every penny for about 5 years for a lavish wedding, and it cost thousands. After the official reception, there was a house party. I needed the loo, and ended up waiting outside the toilet for quite a long time. Then the groom shuffled out, looking very sheepish with 2 women. Apparently, he then confessed to his new wife that he was doing substances in the bathroom with them, and they all got naked. Maybe me knocking on the door stopped it going further, and the marriage lasted like a couple of weeks into their honeymoon. I swear the amount of money spent on a wedding is inversely proportional to how long the marriage lasts. Next story. My ex-husband's cousin had the most beautiful Harry Potter-themed wedding. They spent a lot of time, money, and energy on it. A lot of their guests showed up in street clothes. The invitation required formal attire. Next story. At my Sil wedding a few years back, as the night was coming to an end and everyone was leaving for the night after the party and all that, we all couldn't find my wife anywhere. There was a sense of dread because we had all been drinking way too much, and there was a pond in front of the venue. As time went on, and we still weren't able to find her, dread started to sink in, thinking she somehow wandered into the pond. Come to find out, she was found in a drunken sleep in an elevator that had been turned off for the night by groundskeepers, and had only found her because one of the venue personnel forgot something upstairs and went to use the elevator. Wild night. Next story. My sister, the maid of honor, was in charge of carrying out the cake boxes to help me assemble my own wedding cake. I am a professional baker, and I made my own cake. Well, she slips in her nice dress, dropping the cake box. It splattered in the box, and she couldn't stop crying about it. I told her it was okay and I didn't care, but she was inconsolable. Overshare, but I wasn't able to wear underwear with my wedding dress due to a very low back. So I told her to stop crying, or else I'd drop kick the remaining 2 cakes into the reception hall without any underwear, in my big-ass wedding dress. All in all, it made for an adorable and silly bonding moment between my sister and I. The venue kind of slapped the cake back together in a mound and served smashed pieces. People still rave about how tasty it was. Next story. Bridge didn't turn up. I was a guest of the groom who was a mate from work. Most of both sides of the family left. It was at a hotel, so all the food was cooked and wine was open. The groom's dad, who had paid for a lot of it, said, "Damn it, let's stay and eat and drink." About 30 of us did. A few of the dad's friends, and then other Rouge guests such as myself did exactly that. Even the band still turned up and played. Some of the staff also got involved and we partied into the night. Met some great people, some of which I'm still friends with. Sucked for the groom, but all in all a top night for the rest of us. They broke up and met someone else, and has now been married 15 plus and has 3 kids. Second wedding wasn't as much fun, his dad agreed. Next story. I caught the father of one of the bridesmaids making out with her in a room. I'm not much of a fighter, but as an adult survivor of assault, I knew I had to do something. But I got a couple of decent shots in right from the start, and he crumpled like a wetsuit. I was arrested for assault. He was arrested but charged with many more crimes in the ensuing weeks. He lost everything. And I mean everything. He was eventually jailed for 7 years and is now on the register for life. He now has no home, job, wife, family. This was 15 years ago, and she's now married with her own family. Oh, I was never actually charged with assault in the end. Next story. Went to a fancy wedding where the ceremony was only about 5 minutes long. Not wild enough, you say? Well, I've sat through some boring weddings in my time. 5 minutes and done still seems crazy to me. It took longer to leave the cocktail hour beforehand and find a seat. Then, we were up almost instantly to the reception. My favorite wedding. Probably better than my own. Next story. They had the groom, a very nice, sweet, quiet but insecure guy, remove the garter with his teeth, blindfolded. But they swapped out the bride for her uncle in a long skirt. I felt so bad for him I left the room. I heard everyone laughing. A minute or so later, he walked by me crying, with the bride running after him. I said to my girlfriend sarcastically, "I can't believe no one saw that coming." Also, the wedding ceremony was outside, and the music was played from a pickup truck. The priest seemed to think he was there for stand-up comedy. I was overdressed in a suit, someone wore jean shorts, and the food looked like potluck. I'm not trying to insult the wedding, just describing the type of wedding. Next story. One of the bridesmaids and her boyfriend got into it after they snuck off to do some in the bathroom. He tried to start a fight with everyone, was restrained, and police were called, and he got hauled away. Next story. Did wedding photography for a decade. 3 stand out. Fist fight over the bouquet toss. Girl caught the bouquet, and her boyfriend did not catch the garter. So he punched the guy who did catch it in the face, while he was putting it on the bouquet catcher's leg, right in the middle of the dance floor, in front of all the guests. A fist fight broke out, but was quickly broken up. A group of people sitting together at a table showing me their homemade film on their digital cameras, and asking if I wanted to join. The groom, who made a toast to his own mother, and said she was the best woman, and his wife was just like her. He fawned over his mom the whole speech. It had horrible incest and overbearing mother vibes. Next story. My sister's wedding. On the day of the wedding, Her husband-to-be was acting strange the entire time leading up to the ceremony. Once the reception came around, he began cursing randomly at her and making remarks like he wished he hadn't married her. Eventually, his groom party, best man included, approached me about beating him. For the sanity of my parents, I pleaded with them. No. He continued, and eventually ducked out under the tent and ran away for about 45 minutes. He eventually came back. He played it cool. When the reception moved to my parents' beach house about 2 blocks away, I stayed behind to help clean up. My mother received a call that something was happening. I told her I was leaving, and she begged me not to go, but I did anyway. As I was running back, I ran into a police car and stopped it. I said, "You must be going to my parents." I got in and arrived as the groom was storming out the front door with blood all over him as he tossed his wedding ring into the bushes and ran for it. Turns out when they got to my parents, he laid down on the couch and began talking more crap, especially about my sister. My father asked him to get up, and he punched my father, which point his own friends began fighting him. Turns out that, as I had always suspected, he was a drug addict, and my sister and family had not wanted to believe it. Next story. At the rehearsal dinner, the best man gave a toast, and in front of all families and guests, he ended it with, "I can go with you tonight," in reference to the bride. I know the bride's father, and to this day don't understand how he didn't beat that guy with his bare hands. Next story. My wedding. I threw the bouquet, and my friend all but flung other women from her path to grab the bouquet. Other unmarried scattered in terror. She grabbed the bouquet from the floor as it was a winning lotto ticket. She turned and affixed her boyfriend with a death glare. It was a warning. They are married now. Next story. During the reception, rather than have the best man do a speech, the groom grabbed the mic and unleashed on a rant about the bride's parents and family. The dad stood up and got into a shouting match, which included, "Crap like this is why we didn't even want her marrying you," and, "It's fine, they'll be divorced in a year." They were, in fact, divorced within the first year. Next story. A candle was placed too close to some flowers in the church, and the flowers caught fire during the ceremony. It was discreetly handled. The couple didn't even know it happened. Next story. A pig roast. Like a professional team came in to do it and everything. There was also a canoe full of ice and cans of beer and cider. The wedding was on the groom's farm in rural Ireland, and we slept in tents in the fields. It was amazing. Next story. The groom dancing with his ex-girlfriend and forgetting where he was, and gets caught up in a kissing embrace as the people on the dance floor moved back, and there they were, oblivious, until the bride's mother intervened, like a movie. Next story. Wildest I've been to myself. Father of the groom had a not-so-subtly phrased speech. Words to the effect of, "You rarely listen to good advice, and I can see you're not going to listen this time either. You're on your own." Wildest I've heard of in my group? Friend's relative getting married. Stag do was the night before the ceremony. Groomsmen were told to take it very easy. Groom was found, upper part of his tuxedo ruined. Every item below the waist missing entirely. He's alone, 20 kilometers from the church, and it's about an hour after the ceremony should have started. The groomsmen did arrive at the ceremony, on time. By the time they were pressured into revealing groom's probable whereabouts, the bride was furious, and once he was found, she went ballistic. Wedding postponed, friendships ended, marriages ended. They did get married later, without the groomsmen attending. Next story. I have two. One, my own wedding. My mill told my wife's ex about our wedding, and he came in and burned our venue to the ground. No one was hurt except him. We sued him for all he had and won. We're currently coming up on our 35th wedding anniversary. 2. My alcoholic brother married the wrong twin. My brother and his ex-fiancée were about to get married. He has a drinking problem, and her twin sister also had one. They got blackout drunk on the day that his ex and him were supposed to go to the courthouse. Well, they skipped the rendezvous at our parents' house and went right to the courthouse and got married. It was a true wake-up call for his ex and my parents. They were cut off, and took them a minute to figure out how to get annulment. I can report his ex, wife and I are good friends with her, has been happily married. Next story. I wasn't there to witness, but the wedding was legend within the office we all worked at in 2007. My coworker was the single income between he and his then-fiancée. She spent a year planning the $100,000 in 2006 money wedding. It was a destination 3,000 miles from home. Her dress had a 30-foot train. There were doves, geese. She rode in side saddle on a white stallion. There was nearly no thought or planning into what my coworker was to wear or do. He got no pomp nor circumstance. My other coworkers who were there said it was like a Buckingham Palace wedding. Anyway, while they were still heavily in debt from the wedding a few years later, she divorced him. Next story. This thing happened over 2 weddings that were 3 weeks apart. My future brother-in-law came to the first wedding with his wife of 20 years. The second wedding, 3 weeks later, he came with his new girlfriend. They grinded on each other on the dance floor all night long, 2 50-year-olds in each other like teenagers when their parents were out of town. At a different one, my second cousin is a professional wrestler, so all his friends are as well. When they did the garter toss, they choreographed a wrestling match and did not warn the staff, so they called the police. Next story. The groom's sister trying to do BJ, the bride's younger sister. The woman was a total and complete crap show the entire day. She drank each and every single can in the bridesmaid's tent, bawled like a baby during the actual ceremony, interrupted both the best man's speech and her mother's speech, and nearly tumbled headfirst into the outdoor fire pit after getting falling down drunk and do substances for something like 9 hours straight. A week later, the bride's family made it clear that they plan to skip any family gathering 3. Is even a remote chance she might attend, and although this happened 15 months ago, I don't think she's spoken to either of her brothers or her mother since that day, other than to field one call from each of them, wherein she was informed that she's going to be shunned until she makes a formal apology to the happy couple. Her husband of 12 years is a recovering addict, clean and sober since 2007, and apparently the incident has put massive strain on their already precarious marriage. I was the best man, the eldest brother, and it was one of the most shockingly embarrassing and incredibly uncomfortable situations I have ever been in, and I've known her for 36 years. I'm still angry. Next story. Probably my cousin's still breastfed 3-year-old walking up to her while she was giving her maid of honor speech at her sister's wedding to loudly demand, "Mommy! Booby! Mommy!" Her sweet but useless husband had one job, watch the kid during the speech, and he failed. Next story. I don't go to too many weddings, but there's 2 things that were interesting at least. 1. When my uncle got married, there was a grease fire in the restaurant's kitchen where the reception was, and we all had to evacuate out to the parking lot until the fire department had taken care of things. The bride and groom were very chill and took some nice photos of themselves on the fire engines. 2. When 2 friends of mine in the local tabletop gaming community got married, a whole lot of gamer friends turned up for the ceremony. Amusingly, on average, the gamers were dressed more nicely than the other family and guests were, which amused my wife and me. Next story. I married a very Catholic Jamaican lady. Her dad invited like everyone from Kingston, paid for everything. There was like 400 people there. My brother-in-law got very drunk and decided his speech was the time to come out as a gay man, which was very obvious to everyone who wasn't my new-in-laws. Mom is in tears. Dad is ready to throw punches. I'm just laughing, which was not the right response. Next story. Possibly at my own wedding. Looking out at the dance floor at the end of the night, and pretty much every single one of our friends were smoke, and getting down to our killer band. I've also been to some super trashy weddings where there were multiple fights. Dudes fighting, chicks fighting, couples fighting. So dumb. Next story. Nothing too bad, but one was sort of funny. Friend got married. Our third friend/best man had recently been dumped by his girlfriend. Justifiably. The maid of honor to the bride. They dated for 3 to 4 years and had just moved in together when she decided to be with someone else. They agreed to be amicable for the wedding, but he decided to try to make her jealous by hiring a girl to be his date. It was hilarious and sad to see him walk in with a woman that looked like pre-shopping Julia Roberts from Pretty Woman, while his ex had zero interest in either of them. The date actually ended up being a quite lovely woman who was fun and great to talk to. I don't know how much he paid to have her there, but I do know it wasn't enough to include sex. Next story. I was around 10 years old at my uncle's wedding, and for some reason they had the bright idea of letting me hold the camcorder. Well, I did super close zooms on every person's ass that was there and giggled non-stop. Apparently I ruined the wedding video, and my uncle still has a grudge against me some 30 years later. Next story. When you tempt fate by inviting an ex, there's always going to be fireworks. In my case, the ex got drunk, and after the bride and groom left the reception, went looking around for them, insisting he just wanted to talk, and that we were hiding them somewhere inside the hotel. Next story. The bride had her male best friend as maid of honor, or whatever it's called. He gave his speech, and it was like 10 minutes of him talking about they should be together and how they should have been getting married. Awkward doesn't begin to describe it, and I'm shocked no one took the mic from him. I lost touch with them years ago, but they were still married after like 10 years. Next story was at an Uzbek restaurant in Baltimore on a business trip. Restaurant was almost completely packed with a wedding party. Bride had hand-sewed a pocket into the front of her wedding dress for her Marlboros. They kept falling on the floor during the festivities. Next story, my sister-in-law's matron of honor had her water break while cutting it up on the dance floor, and it led to 5 people comedically slipping head over heels like in a cartoon, 2 panic attacks, and 8 ambulance rides from the venue. People don't realize how genuinely slippery amniotic fluid is, but baby ended up being okay, and most everyone else was too. Next story, friend who is a carpenter built a massive marquee in the back garden over a week with friends dropping by in the evenings to lend a hand. Wonderful experience. Day of the wedding, the wind picks up halfway through the vows, ripping the canvas off the back end of it. The all lads scrambling with ropes and nail guns to wrestle this massive canvas back into place and secure it down the frame, all while wearing 3-piece suits. Good laugh and a great memory. Next story, not super wild, but audacious, I suppose. At my own small, intimate wedding, my husband and I were about to enter the gardens we had booked for our ceremony to walk down the aisle together, waiting outside the gates with one of our photographers as we waited for our walk-in song to begin playing. I, in my wedding dress, holding my bouquet, and my husband in his wedding suit holding my arm as we laughed off some nerves. A random family walked up and asked if we had booked the garden space, to which we answered yes, we are getting married today, and tried to quickly dismiss them so we didn't miss our cue. Instead of taking the hint, they then asked if they could quickly peek in to see the gardens, to which we answered, no, we are about to walk down the aisle as everyone is waiting in their seats, with the officiant ready to perform the ceremony. The very dense family assured us that it would only take a minute. They just wanted to take a look at the gardens real quick. Again, we replied, no, we are about to get married right now. Anyhow, they didn't want to take no for an answer, and thank God my photographer inserted herself and very directly told them to get the out of there. Still thinking how funny it would have been if we let some random tourist family walk into the ceremony before us, while our friends and family wondered who the heck these people were. Next story, the groom and his father both like to breakdance. So at one point in the reception, they were going to have a breakdancing contest. They both started dancing, and within the first 30 seconds, a 4-year-old walked by and got kicked in the head, thus ending the breakdancing contest. Next story, the groom passed out drunk on the way to the event, and they woke him up, but he was so heavily that he did the vows in a chair as the best man held him in place. He threw up right before the kiss. They are divorced, believe it or not. Next story, bride got arrested for fighting her sister-in-law, and groom arrested for fighting father-in-law. Was amazing end to the night. I don't know what it was about because I was staff at the wedding, but it was wild. They started yelling obscenities at each other. Then, next thing you know, a whole bunch went outside and the 2 parties just brawled. Next story, I was the only person not seated with family. I was always the black sheep, so it almost made sense. No one tried to fit me in and make space on the other side of the room. The table I was at was the neighbors and babysitter table. They felt really bad for me. It was the final thing I needed to understand that I was unwanted there. I spent hundreds to fly and be there. Next story, my GFS sister's wedding. My GF was the maid of honor. The groom's aunt was very drunk and tried to push the bride. The maid of honor pushed her back, and she tripped over the guide wire of the tent and fell face first into a pole. The groom's father went after the maid of honor, and she broke his nose. Cops got called. My girlfriend got charged with assault, and so did the aunt. Everything ended up getting dropped. I was on the other side of the big wedding tent, oblivious to the recent happenings, playing with the kids. Next story. While waiting outside for his cue to enter, the groom somehow lost the wedding ring. He whispered to his father at the altar, who took off his own wedding band and slipped it to the groom. Just then, the organist sitting at the altar fainted from the heat and collapsed onto the keyboard, causing a sustained cacophony of depressed keys. She was placed on the floor up there in plain view and fanned during the ceremony. After the ceremony, the guests were asked to help search for the ring in the lawn outside the chapel, which we all did for about an hour, and the ring was never found. Next story. My friend in high school was overweight most of her life. She lost the weight and became gorgeous, but was still insecure. Enter scheming BF in the US on a student visa. He wormed his way into her life and proposed marriage. They were both 19. He was clearly and obviously gay. Mannerisms, speech, went to gay clubs, had gay friends. Duck. We told her he is gay. Nothing against gay people, but she probably should not marry one. She, naive and insecure, wouldn't listen. The wedding was a small one, maybe 50 people at the home. She was radiant. He, tiny, pimply, ugly, was wearing a Prince purple velvet coat with a white pirate ruffle shirt and tight leather pants. This was 1991. His guests were his gay friends. Her parents cried through the whole ceremony. They couldn't even watch. They knew as well. This continued to the meals. Most depressing wedding ever. As you can imagine, on the 2-year date of the wedding, after he got his spousal citizenship, he called her up and told her he was leaving her for a man. Next story, older bro got it into his head that what the getaway car needed, besides a rich covering of soap and toilet paper, was a military-grade smoke canister. Against better advice, he wired it to the muffler, and as the bride and groom got in, he pulled the pin. Smoke immediately filled the cabin. Didn't know this, but smoke canisters do their thing by shoot out a good bit of flame, which, with a car covered in loose paper, no bueno. On the video, it looked like the Hindenburg. Everyone screaming, the bride and groom tumbling out onto the ground coughing and gagging, fire flaring up all over. One cooler head got back in the car and moved it to minimum safe distance before it could start any real conflagration. That was memorable. Next story. It was the night before the wedding. A girl I was friends with and then later dated was texted by the groom offering to call off the wedding if she wanted him to. They never dated or did anything romantically. I felt so bad for his wife, as I had met her several times, and she seemed like a great person who deserved better. Next story. Worked the bar for a mid-sized venue for a few years. Kind of place that caters to young, middle-class, self-funded weddings and rougher pushing the boat out ones. Both equal chances of madness. Highlights include the groom dragging the best man through a car window and breaking his nose to stop him drinking driving home. Helped cover that up to the new wife. Best man disappearing before the meal. Bride's pretty rough brother having to make up a speech on the spot because you must have a best man speech. Every other word was damn. It was glorious. Lots and lots of fights and drug-fueled fights. Also, don't smash bright blue cupcakes into the bride's face. It won't end well for you bank balance, or your relationship. Next story, almost ran over a priest in the parking lot. It would have been fine, because he wasn't one of the 12 priests involved in the wedding. That wedding was the most Catholic thing I've ever seen, even more than my visit to the Vatican. Next story, after reports of hitting on people's wives at the reception, a drunk friend of the bride slid the wedding cake across the table and into the trash can. When everyone stopped to see what happened, or who it was, he says, "Oh, what? I'm the asshole now?" He then gets escorted out by a few friends. Next story. A fight between the groom and the bride. He was a drunk and couldn't have one night without drinking. Wife got upset and walked around smashing all the wine bottles and glasses off the tables. In his small defense, I don't know why you would have any kind of alcohol around an alcoholic if you didn't want him partaking in it. Next story. I was photographing a wedding where the groom, with a previous significant head injury that had required plates in his head, chose to do a back handspring and hit his head hard on the ground. The bride and groom had to leave to go to the hospital. As far as I know, he was fine. Next story. Grew up as a PK, so I was the acolyte for many, many weddings of people I didn't know. Obviously, my dad was invited to the reception and would say grace before meals, etc., and most of the time the wedding parties invited family along. One wedding, there was an actual "speak now or forever hold your peace," and from the back of the church this lady yelled, "She's a whore!" Well, that started a pew-clearing brawl with my dad yelling at everyone to stop. This was fantastic to witness. Looked like a real-life Jerry Springer show. Second crap was at a reception. Only about a year later, I went to the bathroom in back of the reception hall where no one really went during events. It was behind the kitchen, and no one even knew it was there, other than people who worked at the church. Anyways, walked in and saw two guys in a tux, groomsmen, and definitely not the groom, with the bride. At that age, I kind of knew what I saw, but turned and went to head back to my family's table. They all 100% saw me, but never said anything. I didn't say anything to anyone. Told my dad years later, and he just shook his head and said nothing surprised him. Next story. My mom had a student of hers get married and had my sister and I as part of their wedding party. During the vows, which took forever, I had locked my knees and went to pass out. Other groomsmen caught me real smooth-like, and I snapped out of it. Ceremony finished, and only my mom, the other groomsmen, and the bride's dad saw. Next story. 40-some years ago, at my uncle's wedding, there was a Rocky Horror Picture Show convention at the same hotel. The attendees of the movie convention crashed the wedding, and everyone had a blast. My uncle and aunt cherished the pictures of all the different characters dancing with wedding guests, including a pic of my, now, aunt dancing with Dr. Frankenfurter. Next story. My wedding was a nightmare, married at my parents' house. My father was drunk, slipped walking me to preacher. Preacher kept getting my husband's name wrong. My brother with his friends, not invited, showed up late, during vows, sat out in yard reeving their Harleys. So loud we had to yell our vows. My mill wore a green plaid, dirty polyester pantsuit because she hated me, and said loudly to her son, "Well, you did it. You actually married her," and left. She hated me only because I was only 18, and her son, 20, was supposed to go to school in my town and move home. He was now staying. All my fault, apparently. My wedding dress was my sister's I borrowed, and she told everyone it was hers. The wedding cake was a sheet cake my mom got a neighbor to bake. Was just plain white. No reception. Everyone just stood around in front yard talking with cake. Next story. My turn. The bride invited a work friend and told her not to bring her abusive boyfriend. Abusive boyfriend turned up anyway. Abusive boyfriend proceeded to start laying into his girlfriend in front of everyone. Obviously, other guests got involved and a huge fight ensued. Some genius gets in a car and tries to run someone down, ripping the fuel line in the process. Next thing you know, there's fire brigade sorting out the fuel leak, police taking reports, and an ambulance for the girl who got decked by her boyfriend. The bride and groom had left before shenanigans kicked off, so didn't know this had happened until they got home and received a phone call from the police asking for a statement. Aside from that, it was a cheap wedding with pre-made and defrosted cupcakes as the dessert, party finger foods, beer, and wine. The mob's ex-husband stood up and made a speech about how he still didn't understand why his wife divorced him. That was super awkward. Needless to say, the bride and groom have spoken about having a second wedding one day to create better memories. Next story. It was technically after the wedding. Family members snuck out of the wedding early. We arrived back at the hotel to a swarm of police, fire, and EMS vehicles. That family member had left the wedding and passed in the hotel room. As we were walking in, they wheeled him out on a stretcher with the Lucas device performing compressions on him. Next story. Wedding. But unknown to everyone but the couple, some issue had come up last minute and led to the couple having a good, hard spat in private at the church before the ceremony. He said something like, "Let's get this over," shortly after the service began. Everything looked normal. The bride, beautiful, came down the aisle with her father. The ceremony started, but what no one understood was all this time she is thinking. They reach the magic moment. "Do you take this woman?" He says yes. The minister asks her, "Do you take this man?" She says no. Thinking she just was confused, the minister asked her again. "No, I don't!" She walks out, and everyone is frozen. What is the etiquette rule for this situation? Do you stay seated? Do you quietly leave? Awkward, to say the least. The wedding didn't happen. She reportedly returned the engagement ring. Her dad was not very happy about paying for a wedding for nothing, but I admire her courage. It is in a crisis that character is revealed, and he evidently failed that test right before the wedding. She realized it was a mistake and cut her losses. Next story. When I was a kid, I went to a wedding where the reception was held at the bride's parents' rural home. Lots of land, very nice property. Being that this was out in the boonies, there wasn't exactly any parking lots nearby, so they had everyone park in the grass field next to the house. Convenient, but for one problem. It rained all day. At the end of the night, as people started to leave, they quickly discovered that the field had turned to mud, which wasn't nearly solid enough to handle a few dozen of the sturdiest vehicles the early 90s had to offer. The cars sank. Some were in mud up to and past the headlights. I still remember seeing the men of the wedding, groomsmen and all, running back and forth with increasingly muddy tuxes as they tried to free all of the trapped vehicles. We were there really late, but damn was it entertaining. Next story. Not me, but a coworker. He went down to Mexico for his buddy's wedding. When he came back to the office on Monday, he looked weird. I asked how the wedding was. Oh boy. The night before, the groom went out and got insanely drunk, walked off a balcony, and passed away.